As for your male and female slaves, whom you may have, you may buy male and female slaves from among the nations that are around you. You may also buy from among the strangers who sojourn with you and their clans that are with you, who have been born in your land, and they may be your property. You may bequeath them to your sons after you to inherit as a possession forever. You may make slaves of them, but over your brothers, the people of Israel, you shall not rule one over another ruthlessly. Okay. So, slavery in the Bible is a very tricky. It's tricky, but it's not tricky to address. And I haven't done a whole deep dive into slavery then and there versus how it has been in more recent history and even today. One thing to keep in mind is slavery in this time, especially in Leviticus, as it's detailed in Leviticus, is very detailed. It's very detailed what you can do, what you can't do, how to treat them in different situations, and in most areas at that time, especially even now, there were not regulations for how you could treat someone. So it was, they're your slave, you can do whatever you want. That is not what this is. There's a lot of regulations. Let's see. So, I want to make sure this is right. So, Hebrew slavery, between Israelites, it was more of an indentured servitude. So you needed money for something, so you would sell yourself into slavery for a period of 6 years, and on the 7th year you were released. So 6-year contract, released on the 7th year without having to buy your way out. And if you were physically abused by your owner, then I believe it was by the owner. It could have been anybody. Then you were released. Just straight up released. And if they paid off the debt or repaid a theft, you could be released early. And every 7th year, you were all of those slaves were released, and could be brought on permanently if they made the decision to stay. Now, non-Hebrew slaves could be owned permanently and could be inherited by children, and but that's still a lot of the other rules still came into play because let's see. They were required to be taken care of. You couldn't just have them and leave them out in the cold. You had to feed and shelter them. They could not work on the Sabbath, so they had to rest just like you. They were to be treated as servants for hire, not property, even though they were considered property. Let's see. Yeah, and then also if they were injured, if you injured your slave, then they were still to be released. So there was a lot of that is very different from more recent historical slavery and slavery throughout the years. As far as some other things that went on, I mean, there were definitely abuses of it and people who figured out probably tried to go get around things and hide things. But yeah, so the slavery there was very different. I mean, it was different from the Israelites' slavery in Egypt. So while not being good, of course, there were still rules. Absolutely. It's a matter of this is how to, I guess, a humane way of engaging with this practice. And like I said, I'm not an expert on it, but that's like there's more people who know more about it can go more into um, like what historical slavery looked like versus now and how different even just that was to the slavery of the early slavery of African Americans, or I guess Africans in America, and then African Americans generations later on. But also, it wasn't. I mean, a simple difference between those is it wasn't. You weren't allowed to steal people. Human trafficking was not legal. It was expressly forbidden. Stealing somebody to put them to slavery was against the rules. And capturing them in battle, you were able to, but you could not, like, traffic somebody, find somebody, kidnap them, and sell them. Yeah, so the American slave trade and British slave trade, as they used to exist, would have been completely against those rules. And it wasn't based on race, it was based on culture, I guess, nation. When you defeated a nation, boom, you do that, versus everybody of who looks like this is fair game, if that makes sense.